Welcome to In the Lobby, a brand new vertical of the Friday Reporter. I'm Lisa, your guide to where policy meets persuasion and strategy shapes society. Each week, we're pulling back the curtain on the fascinating world of lobbying. We'll sit down with some of the sharpest minds in the industry, those who navigate the intersections of government, business, and advocacy, to learn about what's driving decisions in Washington and beyond. From unpacking the art of influence to diving deep into the most pressing issues of the day, In the Lobby's your backstage pass to the stories and strategies that rarely make headlines. So grab a seat, settle in, and join me as we explore the power of connection, the pulse of policymaking, and the people behind the process. Let's get into it. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for an episode of In the Lobby with a guest that I am just thrilled to be talking with today. If you've been in Washington for more than 5 minutes, you have heard of, met, or been lucky enough to know today's guest, Brenda Becker, who today is the Senior Vice President of Global Government Affairs for Boston Scientific, and my friend for as long as I can remember.
Long
Brenda,
time.
thank you for being with me today.
Oh, this is such an honor, and you are the rock star, not me. So it's just great to be part of your new venture and your new show, and you're out there doing so many great things. I remember when.
I was lucky enough. I'll tell today's guest and today's listener who wants to know how long. I won't tell him how long, but I've known Brenda Becker since her kids, who are now adult humans, were little tiny people, and there was no hint of any little Millers in the world. And today they're all grown up out in the world doing things that are remarkable. But you have been, Brenda, I think, more than anyone I can think of, just the greatest source of advice and friendship in this town that I'm just so lucky to know you. And I feel like so many people have that same experience with you. How in the world, I mean, you've been in DC for a while now. How in the world did you get here from Michigan?
So I just want to quick say those little people, my son is getting married this weekend.
Oh my gosh. I knew it was coming up. That's so exciting.
So it's coming up. But, I love DC. I've been here a really long time, but I grew up in Michigan. So I'm a Midwesterner at heart. So that's where all that lifting others up and mentoring comes from. But I got my Ford EXP and drove here not knowing a soul. And I got, here and have built a life here and 2 children and all that good stuff. Met fabulous people like you and so many others in this town.
You started when you're a college athlete yourself. You have a little bit of a family that has a little bit of, maybe they're not in politics, but they have an interest in politics. What made you come to Washington?
Well, my father was in politics in Michigan. He was a state legislator and then chairman of the Republican Party. So I'm very close with my father, probably my greatest mentor still at 88 and sharp as all get out. And, when I was going through college at Michigan State, I'm a Spartan. I'm so sad we lost last night. But he said to me, and I would go on the campaign with him. I was one of 4, and I was the only one that was really interested in that. And I said to him, I was a business major at Michigan State, and I wasn't doing very well. I still count on my fingers. So he said, if I had to do it all over again, Brenda, I'd be a lobbyist. He goes, You'll make more money. And I said, that sounds good, make more money. So I dove into being a political science major. A week out of college, started working at Blue Cross Blue Shield Michigan as a state government affairs lobbyist. I was an analyst. And what was interesting, Lisa, is I did this bill analysis. I'd come in from Lansing, and I sat there at a desk and see what might impact Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I saw this Elliot Larson. My maiden name is Larson. And I asked my manager one day, what's this Elliot Larson? Why is my family name on all these? He goes, well, your father, don't you know, was the co-sponsor of the Civil Rights Act in Michigan as a Republican. So landmark legislation to this day, the LGBT community, they finally added it. He said, I wrote the bill. It was intended for everybody, equality for all. So I'm very proud of that. And that kind of got me into the public policy space and how do you do good things.
So you were on Capitol Hill, spent some time working on Capitol Hill.
No, actually. So I've been in the private sector. When I moved here, it was to work for the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. There was an opportunity, took it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was there doing national state relations, moved into political PAC fundraising, then moved into kind of lobbying communication. So I was with the Blues for 20 years. And then when it looked like, so I'd never served other than working on campaigns and at Republican State Committee for my dad, had not done that, which is an unusual, there's only a few of us in this town that have gone the opposite way. So then when it looked like George Bush was going to win, I started getting calls when I go into the administration. And I was like, oh my God, I hadn't thought about that. And I went over to the Department of Commerce, where I met you, thankfully.
Yeah.
And so I was Assistant Secretary for Leg Affairs. And that's when I really started spending more time, in the trenches of government. And then, honored to serve for Vice President Cheney for 3 years after those 3 years, and had an office up in the Senate because he was the president of the Senate. And that's really where I cut my teeth from the standpoint of serving in the public sector.
Isn't that funny? I didn't know that. I knew you had been at Blue Cross for all those years, but I didn't realize it was from Blue Cross to Commerce. And then, talk about a lesson in how the government works in a way that, and working for some of the coolest people are not.
The coolest.
Even if it's just, we have so many good friends that we made in that time. You traveled all over the globe with the secretary. You were up and down on the Hill, making sure that big pieces of legislation were happening. So many things happened while you were there running leg affairs for the secretary. Is there one moment? Is there anything that stands out? There's so many, but is there anything in particular that you're especially proud of during that time when you were at the Commerce Department?
Well, when I took the role, I really didn't know what Commerce did. You probably didn't either. It's such a ginormous organization with so many pieces to it. So I stuck to my core, which is my ability to build relationships. I had relationships on Capitol Hill, and Secretary Evans is new from Texas, wearing his cowboy hat, had no idea what he was diving into, really. And so my ability to close that gap for him of having relationships on the Hill, understanding how it worked, was really a great partnership. When I look back, I was in healthcare for 20 years, and it really wasn't much on healthcare at that time, which was refreshing for me to get into other things. You got to remember, we had 9/11, we had Guantanamo Bay, we had all that stuff, the economy. But what really struck out, because of today's world of tariff and trade, we had the Trade Promotion Act that we had to get over the finish line. So that we could trade agreements. And that was long hours, lots of dealing, lots of fun, a lot of pain, but we got it done. And to this day, that was, I remember 3-4 o'clock in the morning, calling secretary up saying, do you want to come up here and have Mexican food with us? Kind of thing. I'm on the balcony with the president, I'm like, okay, I guess you don't want to come to the Hill. But they made all night long.
And I remember that too. That was a moment when we were there, and you were right at the tip of the spear there for the secretary. And so because of all of that great work that you did there, then you're the head of legislative affairs for the vice president. And everybody forgets, he's the number 2 in the big White House, but he's also the number 1 in the Senate. And so there's that is such a big job. And I was lucky enough to be on the Hill when you were there. So I got to see you because I left Commerce too.
When you were in the speaker's office?
That's right. Yeah. So I was lucky enough to see you moving around on the Hill doing that job. That was a huge job. Had to be one of the more than ever. What was that like? What was that job like?
So first of all, had a lot of fear, like we all do. We all have imposter syndrome at one point or another. And I'm like, what can I possibly offer the Vice President of the United States? He had been a chief of staff. He'd been a member of Congress. He'd been in leadership, been the Secretary of Defense. And I just realized it was kind of the same thing. They become kind of in a fishbowl a little bit. And so I was able to provide him kind of context and color to what was going on the Hill. We kept him up to date. The one thing I learned from him, which was just through observation, was he always acted. This is a great lesson for me and anybody out there listening, is act like you heard the information for the first time. I figured by the time I went to brief him in the day, he'd been in with the president, in the security briefings, senior staff meetings, and I would go in and brief what was going on the Hill. And he always took it in. He never said, oh, you already heard about that this morning. And so I figured what he was trying to do is never cut off his sources of information. And it was an incredible job. I cried, I think, the day I had to turn my badge in and leave the White House grounds for the first time, because the experiences, the information, the people you come in contact with, and as you said earlier, the people you work with you're bonded for life, even if you don't see each other all the time, because you are serving a higher purpose than yourself or one organization. It's for our country. It's for the people. And whether you agree with the president or not, whoever it is at the time, you want them to succeed. We want to be successful in this country.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. Act like it's the first time you've heard it. I think that takes a lot of grace to do that, especially if you're someone like the vice president or the secretary of commerce or the head of global government affairs for Boston Scientific. I think that provides people a lot of confidence when they come into the room, because you're not causing them to be back on their heels and trying to say something new. You're sharing your point of view.
Well, how many times does somebody walk into you and say, "Hey, Lisa, did you hear blah, blah, blah?" And you're like, "Oh, yeah, I heard that already." And by the third time somebody does it, you don't go in there and tell them anymore. And they may miss some piece of information. So I try to always say, "Oh, thanks so much for telling me." "Oh, really? What happened there?" To try to dig in deeper of what they know.
I think that's and I wrote it down because I'm gonna hold on to that. I think that's really good advice to really just about anybody in their career. Every time I talk to you, Brenda, I learn something. You are somebody who, and I mean that sincerely. We'll get in a little bit to the role that you have today, but beyond sort of Boston Scientific and being a legislative in all of the global government affairs points of view that you are for the company, you also are really careful about always learning more. When last time we sat and visited, you were talking about being part of this new organization or new group where it was, helping you sort of think about what happens beyond career or how you advance you build yourself even at this level in your career. You always are seeking other ways to enrich your life and your education. That's my particular point of view on you. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think we all have to be curious. We have to have a growth mindset, because even as we age and we have more wisdom. However, how do we continue? 2 years ago with my team here, I said, okay, AI, we better get on top of it. So you have to be visionary. You have to challenge yourself to learn new things, to keep sharp, to be relevant, to add value. So I work with, I think the group you're talking about, Extraordinary Women on Boards. There was Modern Elder Academy. We went out there as a group. I'm not a retreat person, but it was stretch and grow. Put yourself somewhere every day that you fear something or are uncomfortable. I did a spray tan not long ago because my son's getting married. I was fearful of doing a spray tan, and all the young people today are like, "What are you talking about?" But I was like, "Oh, this wasn't bad at all. I may do this every week." So it's always challenging yourself to learn something you don't know, to not fear it, even if you do a little bit, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here I am sitting. Did you ever think I would host a podcast? And here I am.
No, like look at you.
And taught myself how to do it. The Boston, tell me a little bit about those. So you make this dramatic change, this big change from government back into the private sector. It's this big, beautiful company that you've worked now for several years. Tell me a little bit about Boston Scientific and the kinds of work that you do today.
So Boston Scientific is a medical technology, so it's non-invasive surgery. So we do a lot of plumbing in the heart, but we have 8 business visions, all non-invasive, everything from deep brain stimulation to endoscopy to urology, you name it, we do. We don't do hip and knee replacements or anything with the eye, but pretty much all non-invasive. And, our job every day is to connect what's happening so that we can grow as a company. So I have a group of 9 of us. I'm an empowerer. They're all much smarter than I am. They work hard every day. They're committed. They're passionate. But our job is to make sure at the end of the day, your mom, your dad, patients across the globe get the technology and the products to help improve their lives. And that may be, putting a stent in so that they don't have a heart attack, Watchman that catches blood clots if you can't be on a blood thinner. So there are all sorts of things like that. We're even into cancer now with some radioactive beads that directly hit the cancer without hurting the surrounding cells. So all sorts of stuff like that.
Wow, that's cool.
And, you look at healthcare, a global company now, we're supply chain, we're trade, we're
That's right.
tax.
Yeah.
Shipment of lithium batteries that are in our products, when those fires were starting in planes. So our portfolio is broad and it is impactful. Everything from FDA, CMS, highly regulated. So it's really fascinating stuff. Every day it's something different. Now with this new administration, a lot coming at all of us. And my job is to cut through the clutter and work with my team to stay focused on what's important and keep everybody calm.
Well, and that's cool. I mean, it's so much. And I think that goes back to your idea about growth mindset. So even thinking about, because you are in a company that's really thinking that way, you yourself, how do we think about being smarter and better at communicating about what we care about to Capitol Hill, where time gets shorter and shorter with members and staff and other people, because they've got so many other interests they have to pay attention to. So I think that's good counsel to your team too, because that's the way we have to be in everything.
Everything's about priorities. Everything's about, you quantify. You had me talk to the Washington Post years ago about that exact issue. Or the wrong outfit. But other than that, but you look at, when you look at 10 issues, which one is going to be most impactful and at what time frame does that come into play? So you have a lot of moving pieces, but at the end of the day, which one is in front of us? Right now it's tax, it's tariff and trade.
Okay, so Brenda, you had a similar pathway that I did then, that you came from the state and you started work on the federal level. Tell me a little bit about how the differences are now as opposed, I know because you're still in contact with the folks back home in Michigan, with your dad still being involved at least a little bit. And tell me a little bit about the difference between the way the states are and the federal was for you in terms of the two.
Well, I think at the state level, you moved much quicker than the federal level. I still think that's the case. I think that the states now, though, are trying to fill the void because the federal government has slowed down so significantly. We're not getting a lot of things done. So they're starting to do it at the state level, which a lot of times with issues, you say, wait a minute, we can't have a piecemeal of 50 different regulations. We do need federal legislation. So what happens now at the state level is bubbling up more. You even look at state legislators, more and more of them are running for Congress. So those that have been in the state legislature are now becoming congressional members. Governors are now wanting to run for president. So I think it's, it still moves faster, but they're now filling the gap because the federal government has become slow to act. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And to me, because this show is about lobbying in general, right? It's not necessarily about Washington or the states. I always felt that way too. To me, it always felt like Washington moved quite a bit slower. And the state, because of the way the legislative sessions are scheduled and they run, you do see a lot more activity. But I was curious about whether or not that was your same sort of experience and whether or not you see that now. I have to ask too, I mentioned at the top, I'll say it again, I'll say it until I can stop talking. You are a tremendous mentor to everyone I know. I mean, everyone seeks you out as a resource. And it's so, you always find time. I mean, even when I post something about my kids, and you're always so thoughtful to make a comment and it is the coolest thing you do, I think, amongst all of the other things you do.
Thank you.
Who, if you have to reflect back, you say your dad has been a mentor to you. Are there others that stand out that have been mentors to you?
I think that my dad has been my lifelong mentor, and he still is. If there's nothing he doesn't know, and that hasn't provided thoughtfulness on something for me with great wisdom and living life. I think throughout my life, I've had different mentors for different things. And a perfect example, Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, new manager, was dealing with some struggles. And I went down to HR and they said, you know what? So-and-so is really, really good manager. Why don't you go talk to him? And I was like, okay. So that was the first time where I was like very specific about asking somebody to help mentor me through being a new manager. because nobody teaches you how to be a manager. It's really a learning experience. So I think there's many people throughout my life, and I still look for mentors. Some of these new groups I work with that I've talked to you about, Extraordinary Women on Boards and those type of groups, I find people in those groups that become new connections, and I will call and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? Can you help me think this through? And so I think mentors are throughout your life. They're different people at different times that you pull in because you're going, God, and those are the kind of calls I get. It's like, I really need to talk to Brenda about this, and I take such great honor that somebody would want to hear what I might say. But I think, Lisa, the key is listening. People really just want somebody to listen to them. They don't want them to necessarily fix it. They just want a little guidance. But it's, 2 ears, one mouth. We want to talk all the time, but it's really the listening skill that is so important to helping others.
Oh, it's the biggest gift you give, and you give it every day. Even every time I see you, like I said, I learn something new. I think it's always really thoughtful, and it's really grounded in, and I say it all the time, it's the word of the podcast, but authenticity. Like, I know I'm always going to get the realest Brenda when I see you.
What you see is what you get, girl.
And I know, and I appreciate that so much. So outside of all of this, right, you're a lobbyist for a big, beautiful company. I say big, beautiful a lot lately. I can't imagine why it's coming from. But you also have these two dynamite kiddos who are adult human beings. One's getting married. One has both of them have very successful careers. What else you're involved outside in your community? Tell me what else keeps you busy.
Well, I made my living room into a gym, so I keep very active, busy, trying to stay fit. I get great joy. I get a lot of stress release from that.
Yep.
I've had some injuries lately, but I love golf. Pickleball, I've gotten into that. I love to hike. I love to be in the mountains. I love to be at the ocean. I like to travel. But I mostly just enjoy being with my kids. My little grandpup, he's a little French bulldog, and take good care of him too. He's everybody's dog. Said to my daughter when she got it, now this is your dog. It's everybody's dog. We love Bud. His name's Budweiser. But I just enjoy being with people, meeting new people, and I'm starting to just say, every day find joy. I read books. My recent one by Mel Robbins, everybody's talked about, is Let Them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started that book. The other one is Die with Zero. That's giving some great perspective on how to think about living. So many people worry about how much money, even if they've got enough, but they don't think they have enough, and how you look at experiences with that money that compounds like it would be in the bank. It's just a really interesting book. So I stay very active. I don't sit still very well.
Well, and you're the chair for the Congressional Institute. You give back all the time. You're always looking. So on top of all of those other things, you're involved with helping Capitol Hill staff be successful in the challenges that they face today. You're involved in so many different things, and I love it because it gives me an opportunity to run into you as often as I can in Washington.
No, it's always fun to see you.
And I think that's the thing that really sort of excited me the most about this conversation, is because I wanted to sort of peek behind the scenes. Like, how is it that you became to be this super cool mentor? And it is legitimately the one thing I take away from all of our conversations. But also, too, you've had this great, big, cool career where you've done a lot of really cool things. But you are always helping others find their pathway too, not only in terms of giving them advice, but also job-wise. You're very thoughtful about that. And that too, I think, is something that is so neat. But I also have to ask, okay, so this is the lightning round. This is how I have some questions. Your team will always be Michigan.
Michigan State. Right?
Michigan Go State. Green. Always Michigan State. Are you a coffee drinker?
Yes. Not big, but I just bought the Euro machine.
Okay.
It changed my life. Keurig, I just decided Keurig's out. So now I have my flat white in the morning.
I like it.
Press of the button.
Because there is no city that's more caffeinated than Washington, D.C. as far as I'm concerned. Your go-to meal?
Bolognese. Pasta bolognese.
Great pick. Great pick.
And anything with sugar, but I've given up sugar lately. So not just with Lent, but just the last couple of years, how bad it is for you.
That's disappointing. Favorite place to visit?
Italy.
Yeah, great.
Love Italy. Anywhere in Italy.
Yes. Oh, I got to get there.
Oh, God. When you decide to go, let me know.
I'll let you know. I promise. And then the last question for the show is always, who should I have for a future guest?
That's really hard. There's so many fabulous people, but can I lay out two, or can I is it just
You can have as many as you like. There's no rules on my show.
I'm going to give you two. Jane Addams.
Okay.
Who has been a rock star, in my opinion, lifts others up, and Tiffany Moore. She's phenomenal, too. I mean, they're both women that have been in my circles a long time and have been very supportive of me constantly. It's always, how are you? And they're just beautiful, lovely women.
Isn't that the best? Brenda Becker, I have 100 more questions for you, but 30 minutes is my promise. Thank you for being my guest today.
Just tell everybody, believe in themselves.
That's great advice, my friend. Thank you.
All right. You have a good one.
That's it for this episode of In the Lobby, where we connect you to the people and policy shaping our world. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with your network. It helps me bring these important stories to even more listeners. And if you'd like to get in touch, have a guest suggestion, or just want to say hello, you can reach me directly at lisa@fridayreporter.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time here on In the Lobby.